Hi, World Journal. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present today. I hope you get a lot of really good information. And I'm actually this is a recorded version. So if you do have any questions, I will leave a link at the very end of today's webinar so that you guys can ask any questions that you have. But I'm very excited to share some information. And since we are a little bit of short on time, I'm going to go ahead and dive right in to our webinar today. So today we're going to be talking about winning the college admissions game. I'm actually going to show you guys inside admitted students' applications, students that we've worked with recently, and that way you can see what are some of the things that they've done. Once again, my name is Jenny Wheatley. I'm the current president here at Admission Masters, and I'm thankful for World Journal for giving this opportunity to share some really good information about the college admissions as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about five main areas today. Key admissions trends from 2025, strategies for international students, but just students in general, policy shifts under the Trump administration, standing out academic, extracurricular, and personal narrative case studies, as well as application strategy and timeline. So just to get started, I wanted to talk about a couple of admissions trends just so that you are aware of what are some things that are changing in college admissions that you need to be mindful of as well. So first and foremost, test optional. So SAT, ACT test optional, and now even the ACT is having science section to be optional as well. The test optional is here to stay, but many top applicants are still submitting strong scores, and some colleges are requiring those scores as well. And so even if there are many colleges that are test optional, I would say still a lot of top applicants are still submitting strong test scores. Even at schools like Ivy Leagues and like UPenn, for example, and Amherst, they are reporting that, over 80% of students that were admitted to their school did submit an SAT or ACT score, even if they were test optional in the past. So it's just something to kind of think about. They are submitting scores in the 75th percentile, which means it's about a 1530 or above for the SAT, a 34 or above for the ACT. So if you are students who are considering submitting test scores, you do want to make sure that you are within the top 75th percentile. And that we are seeing fewer international students getting admitted to public U.S. colleges, partially due to budget shifts. So UC schools, at University of Michigan, University of Texas, University of Washington, right? Any of these public U.S. universities, they are having to admit less international students. And we do foresee that this will continue under the Trump administration as well. There is an increase in the use of AI in application review, especially at large universities. They are actually using AI to review applications, particularly the academic part of it. Everything else is reviewed, and holistically, the decisions are made by humans, but there is an increased use of AI generally in reviewing applications. There are stronger preferences for applicants with demonstrated impact, not just credentials, which I'll dive into later in this presentation today, and also an emphasis on authenticity in your essays and activities. As you guys know, with ChatGPT, there's obviously more students using, platforms like ChatGPT to help them in writing their essays and things like that. I'm not totally against, using ChatGPT to kind of outline or brainstorm your essays, but ultimately they are looking for authenticity when you're writing your essays, and so the writing part should be done by you ultimately. But with that, let's just keep going, and I'll dive into these points a little bit more. So the first thing I just want to remind everybody is college admissions is holistic. Everything is holistic admissions. They're going to be looking at five main categories when they're looking at your application: academic excellence, extracurricular depth, personal narrative, letters of recommendation, and your fit to the university. I think a lot of students understand the academic excellence part, right? But just to kind of summarize, you should be taking rigorous courses at your high school. You should be striving towards towards good grades, like perfect A, like all A's or a couple of B's, but generally the better the grades, the better it is. You should be doing well on your AP exams, getting 4s and 5s, and you should be getting a good SAT and ACT score. So that is the academic excellence foundation, right? I'll dive into a little bit more in ways that you can show academic excellence, but generally that is something that everybody knows. And then extracurricular depth. This is depth in your understanding of your particular activities and the impact that you have through your activity. So that's the depth part. Personal narrative is your story. I'm a huge believer in that every student is different, and showcasing that personal narrative and that story is really important through your essays. And also your letter of recommendation. This is actually a really big factor in college admissions. One of the big trends is that college admission officers have mentioned that they're actually going to be caring more about the letter of recommendations. In the past, it only made up about 5 to 10% of the overall weight of your application. And now they're thinking that it will take more of the 10 to 15 and sometimes even 20% of the weight of your overall application. So just to kind of showcase that there is importance in letter of rec. And then the fit factor, the institutional fit is also really important. I would say in a lot of cases, colleges are looking to really build their incoming class. So it is important to understand that each of these colleges have preferences in terms of your experiences, your background, your cultural background, your diverse kind of perspectives, the schools that you go to. All of these things kind of build this puzzle that the college admission officers are thinking about when they're kind of building their class, right? So how you fit and what type of personality and characteristics that you have that you'll be bringing into their school is also going to be really important. Okay, so what are some ways to make yourself different, right? So if these are the 5 qualities that college admission officers are going to want to see, then wherein lies the difference, right? What can I do to make myself unique and different? So there are 5 ways in which you can do this, right? Number 1 is depth over breadth. And this is something I talk about a lot, but basically it's this idea that you don't want to just show college admissions that you have a lot of different types of experiences, but rather you want to build a spike. I'm going to talk about a spike later on in this webinar today, but basically you want to be really deep in a particular interest. I like to call that a level 2 interest. So if you are a student, for example, that really loves biology, they want to see that you are really deeply engaged in that particular subject. So within the level of biology, are you interested in cellular or molecular biology? Are you interested in psychobiology, right? What type of level of depth of biology are you interested in? That depth is something that you really want to build, that niche area of focus. And then you want to create something that is unique to you, a research, a business, an app, a nonprofit, a publication, right? There's a lot of different ways to showcase this level of depth, and you want to create something that's unique to you. And you also want to lead with your values. A lot of the activities that you showcase should really be aligned to your values, and the impact is really rooted in your story and the person that you are and what inspires you to do the things that you do. You also want to emphasize global perspective and cultural agility. What I mean by that is you want to make sure that college admission officers know that you are not someone that lives in this bubble, but that you are very aware of what's going on globally across the world and how global challenges influence societies within your own community as well. Having that perspective and that real world, large scope meta perspective is something that college admission officers really value. And then, of course, you're going to use your essays to really connect these dots, right? Your passion for your major, the academics that you did, your extracurricular approach and experiences, your ability to think outside of your own community, right? You want to build and connect all of these things together through your essays. Okay, so I talked about academic excellence earlier, and I just want to dive into this a little bit more. Academic excellence is more than just your grades, right? I mentioned that earlier. Obviously, you do want to take the most rigorous courses that your school offers. And I want to be clear here that your high school offers. If your high school offers honors and AP classes, but they don't have IB, then you want to make sure that you're taking a lot of those AP level courses. If you know that a lot of the top tier applicants at your school are taking the highest level of AP and math and science courses, then you want to make sure that you compete against that. So give yourself that edge. Make sure you're taking the most rigorous courses that are offered at your high school. And if you've exceeded the number of rigorous courses, or they don't offer as many rigorous courses at your high school, then you can obviously look for outside resources like UC Scout or going to your own local community college to take courses outside of your high school. You also want to aim for academic honors, like being in the top 10% of your high school, getting national awards, going into Olympiads, essay competitions, things like that, that really showcase your ability to understand academics and apply that in particular areas that you see fit. And exploring academic interests outside the classroom and outside your school. So again, taking online courses, maybe doing some independent projects and research and competitions. These are ways to showcase your passion in a particular subject as well. Okay, so I talked about a spike, right? Depth over breadth. And spike is something that is really important, in my opinion, because that's what's going to set you apart. That's what's going to make you unique. That's what's going to make differentiate you from other applicants. I'm going to show you two of my students that I've worked with previously as an example of how they built their spike and what we did to help them build their spike. But this is what we do at Admission Masters, right? We organize and understand a student, their strengths and weaknesses, their interests and their hobbies. And then based on those things, we build a spike. We build something that's unique and different, something that's going to show a deep expertise or impact in one area of their interest that uses their hobbies and passions and their their interests to build something. And so that's what we call a spike. All of our students at Admission Masters will apply to a college with a spike, and that's something that's going to make them different from other applicants across the world. So building a spike and some examples of that for just so for you guys to understand. Number one, I would say, we had a student in the past that created a climate justice workshops for middle school students. This is a student that was really passionate about education. They were also really passionate about climate, sustainability, environmental sustainability. So we helped them create some workshops that they could teach middle school students over the summer. We also had a student that was really passionate about mental health, particularly amongst teens. And so we created an initiative that we launched across 3 countries where different countries and different schools from different countries will talk about their mental health issues in a big community forum. And then we would come up with action plans of what we can implement at their schools in order to make sure that schools have more mental health resources and that we're spreading awareness of what mental health and having a healthy mindset and how that influences your activity and your happiness levels and things like that. We had a student that was really passionate about computer science, machine learning, and AI, and we built an AI model to detect misinformation. So basically, as social media and just media gets very convoluted these days, there's a lot of misinformation that runs rampant. And this AI model, will sift through all the different media sources and information to tell you what is correct or what is incorrect. The student actually had a partnership with a really big organization that ended up purchasing their AI model and using it as part of their website. So it was just like a really big spike that we built overall. And then we had another student that was a really good artist and a writer, and they published a children's book encouraging self-autonomy. These are what I would say are spikes. And the reason why they are spikes is not because, I'm sure other people have done projects like these in the past, but the real reason why these are considered spikes is because the students were able to use their interest and their passion to make an impact in their community. And that is really what a spike is. How are you applying your knowledge and your background and your experiences to make an impact, and your talents to make an impact in your community? And that's what we did to build these spikes. I'll dive into a little bit more of these in a moment. So when it comes to your essays, you want to put this all together, right? It's the final puzzle piece of your entire application. So what do admission officers want when they read your essays? They definitely want to hear the applicant's voice, your values, and your self-awareness. They want to hear specific stories and not generic accomplishments. Essays are not the time for you to be listing out that you got first place in an FBLA Nationals, that you were the best speech and debate competitor at your school. They don't want to know those things. That's already going to be in your application and in your extracurricular activities. What they actually want to know is your growth and your voice and your values and your characteristics. So if you were the first place in FBLA Nationals, they want to know your story and your growth of getting there, right? They want to understand how this experience developed the personalities and characteristics that you have. And sometimes I tell students that it's okay to maybe even talk about childhood stories or experiences that built the foundation of who you are as a person today and how that led into some of the passions that you have. So I guess the biggest point when it comes to essays is it's not a space for you to reiterate and regurgitate what you did and your academic or your activities and your academics and your resume. It's actually an opportunity to tell a story so that when an admission officer looks at your activities and your major and your academics, they're able to connect all the pieces together using your essays to say, oh, I understand why the student did these kind of activities. I understand why the student was so passionate about studying biology. Those are the things that they want to see through your essays, not a reiteration of the accomplishments that you've achieved. Okay, so key questions that you can ask yourself when you're thinking about your essays. Number one, are you demonstrating a level of growth in your essays when you're telling your story? Number two, have you highlighted something that the admission officers can only learn about through your essay? And number three, are you presenting a compelling quality, something really amazing about you to sell yourself to admissions? These three things are what you need to ask yourself as you are looking into topics, as you are writing your essays. Am I showcasing my authentic self beyond what is in the application? Am I showcasing a really good quality or characteristic that the admission officers will like about me? Do they recognize that I am growing through my experiences? So be sure to ask these questions to yourself as you're writing your essays. If you are a current incoming senior and you're already working on your essays, this is definitely something to think about. If you are younger, junior, sophomore, freshman, or even middle school students, these are things that you want to start brainstorming. So when it comes to writing your essays for college applications, you know exactly how to approach them as well. Okay, when it comes to recommendation letters, there are a couple of main things to also consider. You want to choose recommenders that you're closest with and also ones that will write you the strongest recommendations. I do really want to be clear. There's a lot of myths out there that a lot of parents are like, oh, it has to come from a core teacher. It has to be math, science, English, or something, or history or something like that. Yes, it would be nice if it came from a core teacher. And yes, it's nice if it came from a junior year or a senior year teacher because that's when you're taking the most rigorous courses. However, it doesn't always have to be a core teacher. If you are majoring in art and your art teacher could write you a really good rec letter, or if you have been really close with your AP World History teacher from 10th grade and they were also your club advisor, those people who have worked closest to you and closest with you, those are going to be the ones that write the best the best recommendation letters that are not generic, that are not the typical, oh, this student is a very kind and nice person. They're so smart and they work really hard, right? It's not just that generic aspect, right? These are the teachers that will be able to give examples of how amazing you are and what some of the things that you did inside and outside the classroom. So choose the teachers carefully. Of course, there are schools like MIT that require you to have a STEM and a humanities teacher. But other than schools like MIT, I would say generally you just want to choose recommenders who know you the best. Okay. And then, of course, you want to give those teachers a resume, a brag sheet with very specific examples and anecdotes so that they can use that in their recommendation letters. And you really want to encourage those teachers to highlight some unique qualities like intellectual curiosity, your collaborative skills, and your critical thinking. Like these are things that college admission officers really want to see. Your leadership, right? Your compassion, right? These are also really good qualities as well. So highly recommend that you spend time really thinking about who you want to ask. And also, final tip about recommendation letters, be sure to get in close relationship with your high school counselor because that person also is required to write a recommendation letter. And I would say the majority of my students don't have a close relationship with their counselor because they don't meet with their counselor very often. But I would say that's a habit that you should change and really consider developing close relationships with your teachers and also your high school counselor as well so that you have the best recommendation letters for your college applications. Okay, and then when it comes to standardized tests, you only want to submit strong test scores that could help normalize your transcript. So if you need to submit an SAT or ACT, you definitely want to submit it if your scores are strong. Strong is subjective, but I would say generally, breaking 1500 in like Ivy Leagues and top tier universities, you want to get as above 1530 and then 34 on the ACT. And then for the TOEFL, if you are not a native English speaker and you want to showcase your level of English ability, the TOEFL or IELTS is a good test to take. And obviously for international students, highly recommend to take it. And then for your AP and IB exam scores, this just strengthens your academic profile. If you're a student that got a B or even a C in some of your grades, but then you have a high SAT score and high AP scores, that could help offset, right, your transcript. So I would say definitely consider taking these supplemental tests because a lot more colleges are requiring them. And also it's going to help showcase your academic capabilities as well. Okay, so a couple things that are also changing under the Trump administration that I wanted to mention. So first and foremost, there will be rollbacks on international student visa support. So F1 visa, H1B visa, there's going to be limitations. It's going to be harder for international applicants to apply and get admitted to colleges under the Trump administration because there's so many limitations in what type of visas they're going to provide and offer to international applicants. And so it is going to be harder this year for international students to apply to colleges in the US. I have always, my students ask the question, so does that mean there's more room and opportunity for students, domestic students, right? Students who, are permanent residents, green card holders, or citizens of the United States? And the reality is, yes, unfortunately, because they will have to accept less international students, there will be more space for domestic applicants. And naturally, because, colleges are still a business and they still have to make money somehow. And so they do need to still accept a good amount of applicants in order to make sure that they have enough funding to run their school. And so, yeah, I would say this year, and at least under the Trump administration, and until things change, there will be more competition, less space for international applicants. There will also be cuts to DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion programs, which means institutions and colleges will have to showcase their different priorities. If some schools really want students who, have the best grades and the best test scores, because we're cutting DEI, or Trump administration is actively trying to cut DEI and cutting DEI across the nation, that would mean that there would be more merit-based review processes within college admissions, which is something that could influence students that might not have the best test scores in academics, but they have maybe good extracurriculars or have a really interesting background. They come from low income families or things like that. That could influence those groups of students because of DEI cuts. And then a renewed emphasis on merit-based admissions, which is what I just mentioned, more so than holistic factors. And that's something to also consider is that, your grades and your test scores and things like that could be more important, more now than ever, because of cuts to DEI as well. So how do you prepare? I would say generally strong academics and a standout story is really your best defense. And because of what's going on with the Trump administration and how college admissions are kind of changing, really these two things are going to give you the best chances of getting admitted to the schools that you are wanting to get into, and especially in the top 20 and top 30. So how do we respond strategically? You want to apply to balanced lists of schools. You want to be ready to articulate your value and story clearly in your essays, interviews, and even recommendations. You want to plan ahead because there may be potential visa delays if you are an international applicant. And then make sure you're tracking policy shifts. There's a lot of different shifts that are happening within the higher education realm. And so you want to be really flexible with what's going on under the Trump administration and how that's impacting higher education across the nation. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys two students of mine, and I know I'm kind of running out of time, so I will be kind of quick on this, but I did want to show you some case studies inside my applicants and my students that I worked with at Admission Masters. So this student was ended up committing to Harvard. The student got admitted to actually a lot of colleges, but they ended up committing to Harvard. He had a 4.5 weighted GPA, a super score for the SAT of 1550, and got fives on all of his AP exams that he wrote on his application. Obviously, we don't know, or I know, but it didn't go into his application as his 12th grade AP scores, but everything else he did get a 5. His major was public policy and education. His biggest standout activities, I would say, would be the California Association of Student Council's state president. He also founded an organization called Film Envisioned, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit. He interned for the vice mayor of his city. He was an editor for a literary magazine. He interned for a congressman who ended up running for Senate and won, and he interned for his campaign. He got selected for the Bank of America Student Leaders Program, which is very difficult to get accepted into. He was an intern for the CEO Leadership Alliance, and he was a curriculum developer for the YA program. I would say, just talking about their extracurriculars and their spike, this student had a passion for writing and humanities as well as policy and education. And so we developed Film Envisioned, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on students in low income areas, particularly in Los Angeles. And basically they went through a 3 to 4 week program through Film Envisioned, where they helped these students write their own movies, script their own film, and help them even with the filming process of their first movie, which was super cool. So he kind of utilized this balance of, writing, humanities, and the arts with his passion for helping students and educating students. And then he also led the state of California high school students in developing educational policies to help low-income students. So this student went to Sacramento, helped write bills that helped with educational policies that kind of shifted budgets and things like that for low-income students across the state. Things that he wrote in his essays, just kind of his last sentences. Everyone truly deserves a home built through the bricks of human compassion. While my home has a long way to being fully built, I'll continue on this journey, ready to provide the building blocks of life and restore the shared connections of humanity. The student basically focused his essays on this idea that compassion and human compassion is a really important aspect in everything that he does, which is why he's really passionate about educational policy, which is why he's really passionate about creating organizations that help with education. And I think he really clearly depicted that in his essays. He got his recommendation letters from his English and history teachers that highlighted his passion for, the subject and his natural leadership in the classroom and community. One of the teachers mentioned that the student was the type of person that they have never witnessed in their 15 years of teaching. So the student just really stood out to them. And they also talked about his compassion driven, proactive, and his advocacy for his community and his members. So all of this really built this kind of cohesive picture of the student that had the ideal puzzle pieces for the student's application. Okay, I thought this application was really unique, and the student actually really wanted to go to the UC Berkeley MET program, which is also very difficult to get accepted into. But the MET program is the Management, Entrepreneurship, and Technology program. This student had the 4.86 weighted GPA. They actually didn't submit an SAT or ACT score because they just really struggled with it. And you can notice that they had a few threes, a few fours, and a few fives for their AP exam scores. And she majored in data science, statistics, and industrial engineering. Because of the essence of time, I'm just going to kind of go through this really quickly. She was the Girls Who Code president. She was the 3-time national finalist for FBLA. She founded an organization called She Sparked. She was a founder of another organization called Ingenuity. She interned for the Energy Umbrella. She got the Gold Award for Girl Scouts. She was interning and researched at the UCA Gaddy Beam program with wearable sensors. She also went to Cosmos. The student basically focused on being a minority in a majority, field. She utilized kind of her female minority story and combined that with her community impact project, like She Sparked. She also had a balance, and she showcased her passions in business, STEM, and humanities. And all of the projects that we worked on really focused on this balance, as well as her passion for helping women and females specifically in these fields of coding, of business, and things like that. The essays she wrote about is also about this minority. As I enter new arenas, I bring a profound commitment to opening the gates for others, because I know that being part of a minority requires a stronger and louder voice. It means channeling more grit and determination to fearlessly stand up and become a majority. And again, this was a whole kind of picture that we were building with her. Every activity and project that she did was a focus on breaking these barriers and supporting these minority groups. And the recommendation letters she got were from her English and math teachers. She highlighted her creativity and passion to use her creativity to make an impact. They also talked about her innate intellectual curiosity and how she always went above and beyond what she learned in the classroom. And they also shared a story of how the student was always really kind and approached their peers with kindness and compassion, which I really loved as well. So again, because of the essence of time, I'm not going to go through this too much, but you really want to build this cohesive narrative. As you saw with the students that I showed you earlier, the Harvard and the Berkeley student, they both had this very common thread across their academics, activities, and their writing, making themselves a memorable applicant. What do I want the admission officers to remember about me? And building their application like a story, consistent, meaningful, and personal is also really important. So a couple of final thoughts: be intentional, not performative, focus on the impact, not just participation. It's really, using your cultural lens to your advantage. Stay informed of policy changes that happen in higher education. And it's really never too early to begin reflecting and building these things. At Admission Masters, a lot of our students, start in 8th grade, because we need to build these types of spikes and passions and interests and hobbies early, so that you can be able to submit your application and have a successful result. The earlier you start, the better. I did add, if you scan this QR code, a link. If you have any questions, as I said, this is a previous recorded version. So if you have any questions, please click on the QR code and fill out the form under World Journal Seminar Attendees Q&A. You can ask me questions. It'll come directly to my email inbox, and I will directly answer those questions for you. You can also book a consultation with with us using the QR code, fill out the form. We'd love to hear about you. We'd love to help you and give you strategies on how to build your spike and what you can do to have the best chances and be successful throughout your high school journey and into your college admission. So hopefully we get to meet with all of you soon. And thank you all so much for listening to our webinar today. I hope this was helpful and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone. Thank you, World Journal.